Sixx Sense with Nikki Sixx.
It's Jenn. It's Sixx. Robert Trujillo from Metallica hanging out. What's up, man?
Yeah, just not much. Having fun, here at the Sixx studio, enjoying this.
I like your jacket.
Yeah, Kirk has a buddy who designs this stuff, and he's been trying to get me to connect with that dude. His name is Romulus. And I
want to name anything that. Like, I feel like it's a transformer no matter which direction you go.
Exactly. He's a character, but he knows what he's doing, and I trusted him. And Kirk, he's got these wild friends. He's got this one friend that did all our wrought iron work. This guy in San Francisco called Ruddy. They always have like one name, sort of Ruddy.
Yeah, they have
or
to.
Romulus.
Yeah.
Or Prince or Nikki.
Yeah. How did you even get started on the bass? We were talking earlier about your son and how he's just kind of picked it up and took off. But what about you?
Well, I realized at a certain point back in the 70s that it was the bass that was moving me. That was really sort of, I guess, one of the main instruments that I was kind of focused on. The groove, bass and the drums, really. And at first I wanted to be a drummer, but we lived in an apartment building, little 2-bedroom apartment, and drums were not, something that I could get away with playing in tight quarters like that. And then I saw, I think, like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and I saw that dude on all those keyboards, and I thought, wow, synthesizers are cool. And that wasn't going to happen either because we couldn't afford a synthesizer, and I didn't want to play piano right off the bat. But my father used to play flamenco guitar, which the fingering and the style, especially with the right hand, is similar to bass if you play with your fingers, of course. And he didn't play with a pick. So I started playing that. I started playing acoustic guitar, and primarily sort of nylon string acoustic. And that fingering, and when I discovered that the bass was a funky instrument, and that's where all those funky grooves, whether it was Led Zeppelin or Motown, was coming from, I started to want to play bass. And my dad had a friend who had a hollow body 4-string harmony bass, and it didn't work through an amp, but I could hear it because it was a hollow body. So I started playing that. I played that for about a year, and I did my little scales and all the finger exercises. And
did you teach yourself?
Yeah, I taught myself. I took a couple lessons, but nothing that really helped me. I did go to music school for a year, right down the street from here, actually. A school called Dick Groves School of Music, which was a jazz school.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, now it's a dry cleaning business.
Okay,
but,
well, it's not there anymore. All right.
Back in the day, it was, in the early 80s, it was kind of a cool place.
How old were you when you went there to the music school?
I was 19. Yeah.
All right, so you had already kind of really grasped what you wanted to...
I had already played. I played in a lot of backyard party bands when I was 17. And it was kind of interesting and surreal because I played a lot of Black Sabbath and Van Halen and Led Zeppelin and Rush, So at some point I met Ozzy, and then obviously started playing in his band. So it was always kind of a thing for me to play Iron Man in the streets of Venice and Culver City and Santa Monica, because we were primarily a West Side band. And then all of a sudden I was able to play that same song with Ozzy live in Las Vegas at age, I don't remember how old I was, but it was a moment. That, you always remember the special moments in your career, and that was a special moment. Yeah.
I would say so.
Las Vegas, Iron Man, and that's how the crab walk was invented, because I thought, I'm going to get really low. I'm going to see if this old man can keep up with me. And he did it. And we started doing this dance together. And I don't know if he's still doing it. Probably not, but I'm trying.
Are there any songs that you wish you wrote the bass part for besides?
Oh, gosh, so many. Yeah.
Like, which one just speaks to your soul?
there's a song called Jungle Boogie by Kool and the Gang.
Mm-hmm.
Dun, 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 dun. And I think that bass line for me is one of the most insane, funkiest, heaviest bass lines around. But then but when you go beyond that, then you get into like, you get into Black Sabbath, like Hand of Doom or something, which is just so mysterious. And then you get into Jaco Pastorius, and you get in, with Weather Report, and you're getting into like Teen Town or some crazy, wild, progressive jam. And then you get into like, Geddy Lee and Rush, and you start messing around with YYZ. And that's a real challenge. I mean, it's endless. You know, there's incredible rock bass lines, there's incredible jazz bass lines, and R&B, and there's just so much out there. But I would have to say, I guess, going back as a youth, that was probably one of the most memorable bass lines. Maybe Santana. There was a song called Oye Como Va that was kind of nice and tasty. But that was the beauty of growing up with parents that were a little bit younger, is I had all this music around me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my mom was dancing around in her hot pants to James Brown, and her elevator shoes, she's wearing platforms. And I was kind of right there with her.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Dad's listening to the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin, and my cousins were listening to Black Sabbath and Parliament Funkadelic. So I just had all this around me. And at a certain point, of course, you discover punk.
Yeah.
And you start hearing about Suicidal Tendencies, and then Motorhead, and you just end up having all these heroes. I mean, Motley Crue, I remember that first album they came out with was totally independent release, and I was in this new wave band, and my lead singer, he was Mark Medina was his name, and he was just like, this is what we gotta be, man. He was so inspired and into it, and that, again, I was probably about 19 then too, so it was just, that's what happens. You take this journey as a kid and your inspirations, and you try to stay motivated and stick with it. And then,
we both have younger boys, and it's interesting when they come out and they say, can you play this? Like when you get in the car, or you'll look at their playlist and you're like, wow, like I had something to do with that. My mom had something to do with that.
Right.
My grandmother had something to do with what's in front of you right now and what you're influenced by. It's so cool to influence kids in their musical tastes.
It is. And what we try to do, my wife and I, we listen to everything. So my kids are experiencing, Miles Davis and Public Enemy and NWA. My kids don't curse. They just don't. We don't tell them not to, but they don't. But then the music they listen to, I'm just like, damn. I'd be cussing like crazy.
It's a fine line.
It's like we're really good friends with Mike D's kids from the Beasties, and those little boys, woo.
Really?
4-letter words everywhere. But, but that's cool. That's their thing. They're good kids. We love them. They're family. But for some reason, my kids don't go there yet. Maybe in a couple of years. But they listen to the music. They understand what they like and what's good and what they don't. I mean, my son would start, I don't want to say whining, but like if there was some like Air Supply ballad or something, and you'd know he didn't like it, it's sort of age 2, he just like kind of whatever. So they know what they like,
Yeah. Gee, I wonder where they get that from.
Yeah. Probably the wife, actually. She likes death metal. So
God, I have so many questions. I'll start with the latest record, Hardwired to Self-Destruct. Obviously is gigantic.
Mm-hmm.
What was the process like for you?
For me?
With that record?
Well, Hardwired, obviously it took a while to make. I mean, if there's been any complaints, it's been like, why did it take 8 years?
Yeah, right.
And let me just start there. Yeah, let me just start there. It as a band, and I'm proud of this actually, is we challenge ourselves. And in the journey that we've taken, of course, we were touring for part of that time, but, there was a album that we had, kind of a collaborative, creative journey we took with Lou Reed, which I thought was really cool, and it helped us grow, and it may not have been a big hit with our fans, but it was important to us. And Lou Reed, rest in peace. He's an icon, and to have the opportunity to be creative with Lou is just amazing, So we did that, and it was special, and it meant a lot to us. And then we made a movie called Through the Never, a 3D film with a narrative, and that was, another journey that we took. So, as Metallica, we try things, and Metallica's always done that, whether it's working with an orchestra or whatever. And those are the challenges and the creative challenges and those journeys that I think make you better. And I feel, even like last summer playing Frayed Ends of Sanity for the first time ever, which is a song when I first joined the band, I love that song. And I said, there's no way Metallica's ever going to play this song. It's never been played live, and it's super hard. But, here we are in our 50s, and we're playing Frayed Ends of Sanity last summer. And that's beautiful to me. Why? Because it makes us better,
Yeah.
And that's the thing about Hardwired. Hardwired to me is a combination of us, becoming better as a band, and also having a great time with our producer. Greg Fiddleman is just, has everything to do with how this album sounds and making us play better. I know as a bass player, I've been very fortunate in my career to play with my heroes and, to play different styles. But on this album, it was really about the art of simplicity, but also being heavy and in finding rhythms that counterbalance to James's riffs and Lars's drum beats. And that's exciting. It's fun to try new things with your producer and to get that sound and just to really, have a good time in the studio. So Hardwired, is a combination of growing in, maybe you could even say it's the second step to Death Magnetic, because Death Magnetic was sort of the first journey for me creatively that I took with Metallica, but it's also was Greg Fiddleman's first step with the band as well, and now he's the producer. Rick Rubin produced Death Magnetic, which was great, and it was important, needed to happen. And now here we are. And I feel like we're still moving forward, creatively. There's great energy, and it shows in this album and how it's being received. And, I feel that is a good time to be in the band.
I heard that you can already see and feel the next record.
I can.
That's so cool.
Me personally, I get excited about creativity, and I feel personally, and I've heard James say it too, that we still have yet to make our best Metallica record together. And that's a good thing. I mean, It's not like, we're proud of this.
Right.
And I'm only thinking like, well, if you're proud of this, there's more to come, man. It's like, we got more in us. And I feel like in a way there's sort of a new beginning that's happening here. And, sometimes it's rough, you go through these times and personalities or whatever, and you deal with that stuff. And that, like any band or any family or any situation, any team, we have gone through that in the last just even couple of years. But again, you grow and you get through it. And when you get through it, hopefully you're making kick-ass music and you're playing better. I don't know. I feel like even with these small shows we've been doing, we played Webster Hall in New York, and we played the Opera House in Toronto. We played Vans skate park in House of Vans in London. and it's just fun. But what's been great about it is we've been reconnecting on these small stages, and we realize that we really like playing together, and we really enjoy each other's, it's like, hey, there you are. It's like you're not on like some big aircraft carrier stage, and you might see each other, every 10 minutes. But it's been cool, and I don't know, you can't always predict this stuff. It just sort of grows and happens and feels good right now.
Well, it's exciting as a fan that you took a break then, because who's to say what the product would have been if you didn't? And by break, I mean, as far as records go, but. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we haven't really taken too much of a break, but we've, I don't know. It just, again, when we put our instruments on, it's like we're teenagers again.
Yeah.
It's like there's something there that happens that doesn't always happen with musicians.
Especially to hear that this was essentially what it kind of sounds like to me, a jumping off point for what may be an even bigger, which I can't even imagine. This record is so good, but
that's just me talking.
I know it's cool to hear.
Me and James may feel that way. Lars may sit here and go, "You're crazy,"
right?
But he's always saying that stuff.
How have the fans perceived this record, from what you can see?
From my understanding, they're loving it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm getting texts from Dave Lombardo from Slayer and like Mike Muir from Suicidal, and they're going, "Oh my God, that Hardwired song's amazing," that's kind of cool because those guys don't do that. You know what I mean? They do not. And right when that happened I guess it would be the first single, and I don't know, Hardwired. And that's when I kind of was like, well, something special is kind of growing here. There's just something that's a little different than what's been happening over the last few years. And then it sort of has grown from there. I mean, I even had like the keyboard player, Victoria, who plays keyboards for Stevie Wonder, send me a text the other day. I never hear from her. And she's like, oh my God, the new album's crushing. The bass is in your face. And it's great. It's nice to know that people that aren't normally connecting on your stuff are digging it. That's
it kind of
cool.
hits everybody too. I've kind of seen that from the radio side of it.
Yeah, interesting thing is my son, he jams with again Mike D's boys, and they play this punk music together. Mike D was going, because he has a radio show too, and he was like, I'm finding that a lot of people who aren't metal heads necessarily are digging the new album. They're digging the songs
in its entirety.
Yeah,
not just
and
the
I'm
singles.
Like, really? I'm just like, cool. I mean, I'm like, I don't know what's going on half the time. So I'm hearing it from other people, from my friends and stuff. So I think that is a cool thing, just, and again, you got to keep your feet firmly planted on the ground because it could all change tomorrow, man. And you just got to embrace the ride and the journey and enjoy it while it's here.
Talk to me about Moth into Flame.
Yeah.
What's the song about?
Well, the song, again, James's lyrics and what I got to say is James is always leaving the lyrics open for interpretation.
Right.
And he definitely has his vision and his ideas of where it starts and what he feels it is to him, but that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be that to you or whatever.
Right.
And I think as long as it's positive, that's great. But Moth into Flame, it's in a way, it's kind of like the deception of success in just being popular and in being in the limelight, and in how destructive it can be. The attraction to it all, and getting in this day and age in the society of Instagrams and everybody's sort of into themselves, and you can get caught up in the glory and the success of all that, but it's also dangerous and it can kill you, and even using, I know that some of that whole message was influenced by the documentary Amy, which is a film that he saw and pulled some of that energy from, but again, I say that all these songs, there can be a vision in his mind, but he really likes it when other people can pull from it. I know with Death Magnetic, I had to do an interview and I had to kind of talk about what each song meant to me and go down the list. And I had done a bit of homework on that, and I confronted him on it, and said, hey man, I'm going to talk about these songs and I got to talk about what the lyrics mean and the message. Help me out here. And then so I'm going down the list. And he's like, oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah. Okay. It's just, and then again, it was just like, hey, pull from it what you will, that's cool, whatever. But, with the videos and stuff, you can see I don't know if you've seen all the videos, but we have a video for every song, and it's kind of neat to see the creative vision of these filmmakers and their interpretation of what that is, and their message. Pretty cool.
What role does social media play in your life?
My personal life, I am clueless with social media, but apparently it's important because I had to get like a social media person to help me out with this stuff. Well, the world is obviously constantly growing and changing and progressing, and there's all these things that I don't know about half the time, and I'm pretty old school. So when I learned about social media, and I think even as a band, we're growing and we're learning about social media, and just earlier today, getting messages from Lars saying, make sure you get pictures and, you're documenting this and you're getting it out there. And, it's like, so even he's sort of adapted and adopting the energy of all of that. But I started to realize just in the last, I don't know, maybe year, like I had made a film about Jaco Pastorius, a documentary film. And I didn't know that, you're supposed to tweet stuff out and you're supposed to in order to get people to know what's going on in your life or in your career or anything, you've got to get it out there. Social media, come on, so I'm still learning, but it's very important. It's just the wave of the future and where we're at now.
Nicky, for his birthday the other day, deleted his Facebook and his Twitter accounts.
Okay, yeah.
I was wondering, from your side, because he sees it as it's awesome to promote, shows and
right.
Albums and things like that, but it was too invasive. It was just too much negativity.
Yeah, I agree. I don't pay attention to what's said. I'm sort of under a cloud, and I don't even know. I've never even learned how to use Instagram, so it's like,
see, that's the easy one.
Yeah, I just don't know it. I'm just kind of dumb with that stuff. And I guess in a way I prefer that. You know what I mean? I don't want to get caught up in all that.
Yeah.
And unless I really have to promote something, then we'll go there. But overall, in my personal life, I just kind of keep it simple. So I don't blame him for that. I know, he's pretty high profile cat, so it's going to be hard for Nicky to stay under the radar, and it's like when you start knowing about every move that an individual makes, I think it's kind of definitely evasive and just weird. I don't like that, but it's where we're at now.
What did he say? He didn't want to see what somebody had for lunch. Dave Mustaine. He's like, I don't need to see what Dave Mustaine had for lunch. You know what I mean? I just don't. It's too invasive.
Yeah, exactly. Not interested.
But speaking of social media, I did see the Inner Sandman from when you guys were on Fallon, and it was, it literally made my day. It's one of those things where you hit play and you're like, this is awesome. Was it fun?
Yeah, that was great. The funny thing is we did about 2 other takes.
You did?
Yeah, I think we did. And my wife was saying, that was really cool, but the other 2 takes were better, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't say that she's right on that. I don't know, but I just know that they were fun. Each one was super fun. And the Roots are great guys.
Ugh.
And Jimmy's amazing, but you could feel the sincerity. That was what was really special to me. You
can see it too.
You could feel that they were excited and we were excited, and we were just having this moment. And I was nervous because I was holding it down. I was playing this kind of weird mandolin, guitar, bass thing. I don't know. It was, and so I realized that I was sort of the main groove.
Yeah.
I was the pulse of the whole thing because, just everybody sort of just. So I'm like concentrating on, again, I'm playing on a toy instrument, but I'm like, don't screw it up, man, but the vibe was really fun, man. I just love the sax solo that James does on there. I think it's the coolest thing ever.
Where did you film it? Where do they do that at?
Well, they throw you in this little room, literally, this small room. You got all these little instruments and you're tight. You're literally sitting on each other, and Jimmy presses the video camera and you're being filmed, and that.
Did you like it? How it turned out?
I thought it was great.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Again, I started hearing about it through other people because I'm not always checking out TV, or I'm not always on the internet, and those are the things. Just kind of like trying things, having fun. Things that might seem weird or stupid or whatever. It's just like go with the flow, enjoy, and we're kind of a fun band. We like we don't take ourselves too serious, and we're just kind of like having a good time. And like I said, when we put on our instruments, just start joking around, and a bunch of old guys start playing Thin Lizzy or whatever. Just it's really a trip, to go in our jam space, to go up in our studio, and sometimes just kind of laugh at the whole thing in a good way, though.
Yeah,
but I'm just like, especially looking at Lars, James, and Kirk, and seeing them have so much fun, and stuff like that is cool. It's pretty special.
I can't thank you enough for being here today. Robert Trujillo from Metallica, thank you so much for coming in and hanging out.
Thanks for having me. Awesome. I like the red walls, and I like the cheetah skin
That's
carpet.
right.
I wouldn't have it any other way. Cool.